If you could change any choices you have ever made, would you? You can always make another choice and change the course of your success. Everyone has the potency to make inspired choices. Get ready to listen, share, and experience the creativity that is you. Now, here is the host of Inspired Choices radio show, holographist coach, Christine McIver.
Well, hello, everyone. Yes, I am Christine McIver, and I'm thrilled that you are here with me tonight. It's another Wednesday night here in the house, and we have got another fabulous show for you. We started off our month of July, so if you're listening in the replays, it's July the 8th, 2020, and we started off our July with how to begin again, your life, your business, and your journey. That was last week's show. I really enjoyed that, because I kind of feel like that's where we're at. And that show led into tonight's show, where I have my wonderful guest and very dear friend, Petrina Fava, who's a registered nurse and a professor of nursing, and we're talking tonight about new normal or a different reality. Welcome to the show, Petrina.
Hello.
I'm so glad you're here. So Petrina was with us about a month ago, and we talked about pandemic truth and lies. And it was very obvious to both of us that this was a conversation that was going to continue to evolve and could go in so many, many directions. So when we looked at it this month, we were like, new normal or a total different reality. So Petrina, tell everybody about you. I'm not going to sit and read your bio again. Tell them what you would like them to know about you.
About me?
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of things about me, but I guess I can start by letting people know that, like you mentioned, I am a registered nurse. I've been working as an RN for 23 years in Toronto. I work in pediatrics. I also teach in the nursing program at one of our colleges here in Toronto as well. I do some energy work. I'm interested in energy type things as well as healthcare. So I think I bring an interesting perspective to the table when it comes to these conversations. And yeah, I'm a mom. I have 3 kids, and I just, choose things as they come up, and I do a whole bunch of things, and I do them for a little while, and then I move on to the next thing, and I move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I like that.
That's kind of what I do.
Well,
yeah.
Well, the other thing that you are is you're a very aware person. You're extremely upfront. You are not from an upfront like as an aggressive, but you don't hold back when something pops for you. And I'm kind of watching you on social media. Your voice is getting stronger and stronger, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I feel like through this time during the pandemic, I have really desired to make sure that people have information. And what I've been noticing is that there's a lot of reaction happening, and reaction is not the same as responding, right? And I'm kind of observing where people are getting their information. Is it information or is it drama? And is it false? A false information? Is it correct information? Is it awareness? Is it anger? Is it reaction, right? So I'm kind of watching the world on television and on social media as well, and trying to, and kind of deciphering even for myself, like what's happening, are people reacting or are they responding? Do people actually have correct information? I think being a nurse during this pandemic and watching the news has been really interesting, because it's a topic for which I have, insider information, right? I'm a healthcare worker, so I know things. So when the media reports something, I have this filter of, I can tell what, I don't always know, but I do have knowledge, and so I can really see when the media reports something inaccurately or twists it or puts a dramatic spin on it or isn't interpreting information correctly. And that's been interesting. That's been interesting for me.
No kidding. So when we were talking that's like a major understatement. So we've been in the pandemic, really been locked into it here in Canada since about the the 1st of March, the middle of March, right? So we're 4 months in. When did you find it started to impacting you at work in the hospitals, Petrina?
Well, pretty much by the end of March, we started having heightened precautions, and we started changing our policies around visiting and use of PPE and that kind of thing. So I would say I think it was by the end of March, it started to change things. Yeah.
Okay, so you started to see that. Okay, cool. And then have you seen huge changes since the beginning in the way that the hospitals are operating?
Oh, definitely. So I work at Sick Kids in Toronto, and we like I said, our visiting policy was the first thing to change, right? And so unlike other hospitals, we are actually allowing one parent to stay with the child, whereas many other hospitals in Toronto have not allowed any outside visitors at all. So we're not allowing any visitors except for one parent per child. That actually just started changing this past week.
So what was it before?
What before this week? One parent per patient. Yeah, one parent per patient at the beginning of the pandemic, and just this past week, we've started to make some changes where patients who are admitted to the hospital, like on a unit staying overnight, can have two parents be with them. But our clinics and outpatients are still limited to one. So that's been really the biggest change and kind of the biggest stressor, right? Parents are very stressed. They want to be with their child while they're in hospital, of course.
Sure.
And then lots of changes around the use of PPE, personal protective equipment. The province has asked hospitals to ration their masks, which for me was one of the biggest difficulties. One of the biggest things I had difficulty kind of adjusting to was something that I've never done in all of my 23-year career is use one mask between patients for my whole 12-hour shift. We didn't even do that during SARS. So this was really different and really challenged what I had previously learned about the proper use of personal protective equipment. So that's been a big change, something very different.
So, Petrina, for all of us non-medical people, how much training is involved with medical staff, nurses, doctors, attendants around PPE? Like, is it a one-day course? Is it like, a week? Is it a continuously refreshing course?
So that's a great question. Mm-hmm. That's a great question. Actually, there's a lot of training, which has been probably a lot of my frustration when I see what's happening in the general public. And I have to kind of check myself too. Again, I have to question even myself and be aware of my own reactions. So, I do teach in the nursing program, and just when this started, the end of March, I was in the middle of a semester, and I happened to be teaching PSWs this semester. And the emphasis on PPE starts literally in week 1 of the 15-week semester. So we started teaching proper use of PPE right from week 1. And then in particular, I was teaching a lab course this semester, right? So very hands-on, come into the lab, let me see you put your PPE on. So PPE has to go on in a particular order, right? The gown goes on first. It's like, you don't just stick it on in any order. There's a reason why we put it on a particular order to avoid cross-contamination. And then even more important is the way we take off our PPE. So you don't just, take your gloves off, take your gown off, take your mask off, whichever haphazard way you want. It needs to be taken off in a particular order to avoid cross-contamination, because now is you've been in a patient's room who's potentially got a virus, and if you take it off the wrong way, if you don't take off your gloves and you go to take off your mask, you've just brought the virus to your face, right? So there is training is throughout the program. Right. So, most registered nurses take a 4-year degree program. The use of PPE is reinforced throughout the 4 years. When they go to have their clinical practice, it's continuous. And then it doesn't end there, right? When you go to work, many hospitals have workshops to make sure that you keep up and that you remember, you need to take it off in this particular way. Don't forget, we have reminders, things are posted. So, there is a lot of training around it. It's not just a haphazard put it on and take it off, right? There's a lot of knowledge and rationale behind how we do it and in what order we do it to avoid cross-contamination and spread of disease.
So there's intelligence with how you use it, how you put it on, how you take it off, and in how you use it when you change it.
Absolutely.
So this, I mean, I can imagine that a lot of people that have been trained and take their profession very seriously, that this idea of rationing these items it goes against the grain of everything that you believe in.
Yeah, it does. And again, like I said, I've had to kind of check myself and ask some questions. Is this different? We're in the middle of a pandemic. So am I reacting? Am I just reacting negatively? Or do I need to just move forward with the information that's being provided to me? So it's been, it hasn't been easy for me. And it's, like I said in the previous time I was on, I know that I'm aware of some type of, misinformation, lies, omissions. I had a really hard time in the beginning, and I still do, really being okay with the fact that in our world, our technology in the year 2020, we cannot produce enough PPE for all the hospitals in the world. I can't wrap my head around that at all. So, yeah, it has been difficult. The idea of wearing one mask between patients, that's what it is. If you need to change you change your PPE between patients, there's absolutely no point in putting on PPE and wearing it all day. I might as well just wear my clothes. The idea is that you change it between patients so that you don't spread. If you're not changing it, you're just carrying it with you. So that has been challenging, yeah.
Wow. So, okay, so we're talking about the new normal. With everything, just with this piece alone about the PPEs, and I'm sure that there's many other things you can speak to about from the medical perspective. And I don't want to just speak on that tonight. I'd like to look at other areas as well. But just from the medical perspective, you must be feeling, or let me not project that on you, are you feeling very uncertain what the future and the new normal may be?
Yeah, I think I already know that there are going to be some changes. We're already talking in our healthcare community about actually changing PPE guidelines, which is not necessarily such a bad thing, right? This is what healthcare is. This is what nursing is. Nursing is constantly questioning. We're always looking at what we're doing, and we're always examining, is this truly best practice? Do we really have the correct information? Is this really the best way to do it? Can we do some research to determine if there's something better? So I think change is great. Change is necessary. Science is about changing and always looking for something else and looking for something better. So I think if we are changing our PPE guidelines, it's not a bad thing. But what I'm seeing is that the idea is that we don't know enough about this virus, and so we're just going to enhance our PPE even more. So we're going to just look at changing how we view, for example, contact transmission and what's needed, what kind of PPE is needed. So previously we would only wear PPE. I would only wear PPE for a patient who has a confirmed infection, right? Pre-pandemic. If a patient has the flu, for example, if I was taking care of a patient who was positive for influenza, I would wear my PPE in that patient's room. And then I would take it off and I wouldn't wear it again unless I had to go to another patient's room, in which case I would put on new PPE, right? If my patient had tuberculosis, for example, I would have to wear PPE in that room. But that's not what we've been doing during the pandemic. During the pandemic, we've been wearing PPE for every single patient, right? We're treating everyone as if was assumed to be positive because it was a pandemic, and we had to just take that precaution. So things are changing, and I think it's okay that they're changing. I just I think we need to have correct information, the most accurate information we can have, and make those choices accordingly, make those decisions accordingly.
Right. Well, I mean, I like what you're saying. I mean, science is about continuously looking at it and changing with what's what's actually occurring. I mean, it's obvious that viruses and health issues continue to change and evolve, and sometimes, we get more information about them and we're able to reduce the severity of them, and sometimes things start to come up forward, like COVID-19, where it's worse than it's been in previous times with other things. But as long as we are being transparent, I guess that's a big thing for me, Petrina, especially around the healthcare, the transparency in the communication. That's the piece that I want to ensure that we are operating from, and that's the place where there's a lot of question, which is now becoming the new normal of this arguing and this fighting and people coming forward, on social media and so on, that they've read some little bit of somebody's comments, and then they're taking it and going in some crazy direction, and it's just like, it's too much. And we're going to go for a break in a minute, but I also find myself saying to myself, don't disengage. We need to stay present here. We all need to continue to talk about this, and we need to challenge what we believe or what we know that is not true, and continue to challenge the scientists and the politicians as well.
Yeah, of course, and it's a challenge and question, absolutely. But we have to be aware that reaction is not questioning and it's not challenging. It's just reacting, and you're reacting in a very polar opposite way, right? We have to question. We have to ask ourselves: am I just opposing for the sake of being oppositional, or am I actually being questioned? Am I questioning? Am I wondering? Am I challenging, or am I just fighting? Right? There's a difference.
There's a big, big, big difference. Wow. Okay. Well, we're up for our first commercial of the night, and I definitely want to take it. When we come back, I want to keep diving deep into what was really coming up around the new normal in a different reality, and what that's actually going to look like for all aspects of our lives, not exclusively just for the healthcare aspect. So you are listening to Inspired Choices with myself, Christine McIver, and Petrina Fava, and we will be back right after this break.
Many of us make choices in our lives based on our past experiences or what others believe. What would our lives be like if we made our choices based on what we desire for our futures? When you join Inspired Choices radio show with holographist coach Christine McIver, you'll be provoked to look at what is true and what you know but may not choose that requires your attention. Christine does not hold back and brings all her expertise during each and every show. Are you ready to create the life and the living you truly desire? Listen for Inspired Choices radio show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is Inspired Choices Radio Show with holographist coach Christine McIver. To participate in the program, call in the U.S. 815-880-8255, Canada 613-800-8736, or Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email by sending to Christine@inspiredchoices.ca. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. We definitely are having an interesting conversation. I'm sure we're going to go into some other areas here tonight with Petrina Fava. We're talking about a new normal or a different reality. So, Petrina, when you think about the world that we are in today and you look forward into the future, what's coming up for you? What are some of the things that are maybe poking you, or some of the things that are challenging you or inspiring you, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually I'm excited, especially if I don't go down the rabbit hole that the media is trying to get us to go down. I think really, to be honest, especially at the beginning of all of this, I was actually kind of excited. And I don't know, that sounds horrible, but I mean, things are changing, and thank God they're changing, right? And how many of us have been asking for change? We've been asking for change for a long time. We've been asking for a new reality for a long time. And, is it here? And are we welcoming it, or are we saying, well, I wanted a new reality, but not this way, right? So our barriers and receive what's happening and trust that this is showing up, right? Something that we've been asking is showing up, and maybe it's showing up in a way we didn't expect. But I mean, really, what else is possible? And do we really want to go back to normal? I don't, right? I mean, why do we want to go back to that? In so many different ways. Like in the beginning, when we were in complete lockdown and everyone was being asked to stay at home, I mean, I kind of liked it, and I acknowledge that I am very blessed, and I have a great family, and I have a home. And actually, I was able to go to work, thank God. Somebody said to me on the street, I feel so bad for you because you have to work and you're a nurse. And I was like, don't feel bad for me. Thank God I get out of the house, right? Thank God I have a job. Thank God I have a job to go to, and I'm getting paid, first of all. And also, thank God I get to get away from my children a couple times a week, right? But I mean, for the most, so I mean, and I get that there are people who don't have that luxury and that are at home in abusive relationships, and that's not, it wasn't great for them to be, locked inside. But I enjoyed the space of having no obligation, right? I didn't feel obligated to do things that I obviously didn't really want to do. I when I would drive to work and I would go out on the road, the space and the peace and the beauty of the earth was so, like, it would give me goosebumps every time I would go out and drive. The sky was so obviously much more clear. The moon was obviously so much more beautiful. The skyline, like Toronto skyline, was just so crisp. I felt like, when we go up north to away from the city, and you can really see the stars, I felt like I had that right here in my city. So I knew that the earth was breathing a sigh of relief in those first few weeks when we were all locked inside. I knew that nature was happier. I liked that space that we were in, and I thought, I'm going to kind of be sad when we have to return to normal. And, when I started going back on the road, and the trucks and the pollution and it was kind of like, ew, I don't really like this, right? And it was interesting to me. I was like, maybe I don't want to choose this for much longer. Maybe I do want to move out of the city. So, I had some awareness too, but I mean, there's a degree of excitement there for me, coupled with anger and frustration because the lies are coming to the surface in a big way. So it's a little bit of both for me. But when I look to the future, if we don't try to go back to normal, this could be a really great thing. We could really be moving towards something much greater if we can allow it and if we'd be willing to receive it, right?
Yes. Well, I think one of the things that we all need to kind of check ourselves on is that things are always changing, FYI. And what's normal to people who were born in the 60s and the 70s and 80s and have been creating their life, that was different than the people that were born in the 50s or the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, right? So it's like there is always new realities being created. We are beings that are continuously evolving and changing. I think one of the great things about the pandemic is that it put a demand on all of us simultaneously to look at what we are actually choosing. And, so it's a collective. It feels to me more like we're not going to have people left behind, as it were, with all of this. And we're going to have a new world where each and every one of us has the opportunity to look at the contribution that they are making in their families so much more today, and then in their communities. I mean, it really brought us, and it is bringing us into being more focused locally. And, while we need to understand the impact globally, it's really pulling us in to look at what we're doing in our cities, in our countries, in the people that we live with. And I know for sure that it's the domestic violence has been through the roof since the pandemic happened. There's definitely a lot of mental health issues that have been going on, and all of that is not necessarily wrong, because as things come to the surface, as they rear their ugly head, then the demand gets made for the change.
Yeah, and it brings us back to the point you made earlier about not disengaging. So as these things rear their ugly heads, now that we can't unsee them, right, or we can't pretend that we're not seeing them because they're so much in our face, now we can change it, right? Thank goodness. And I think previously, I guess I'll speak for myself. I was working a lot. I was working at the hospital. I was teaching, and I was in the middle of finishing my degree, my master's degree. So I was like in school working. I was constantly being attached to something that I had to do. And then this came about, and I had to come to a grinding halt. And as much as I like to create and have lots of things on the go, it showed me something, right? It showed me, is this really what you would choose? But if these things don't rear their heads, how can we change them? And I think your point about disengaging is part of that. Like, there have been many times when I have wanted to just turn off the news, and I have. But I mean, I have wanted to disengage. Like, this is just so uncomfortable, or there's just so much heaviness in the world that I haven't really wanted to deal with it. But I think if we all do that, then we cannot impact change the same way. You need to look at something ugly, right? Or even if it's, I mean, we're calling it ugly. I mean, even if you don't judge it and call it ugly, if you look at something uncomfortable, you look at something that looks ugly, right, or appears to be ugly, at least you can challenge it, you can question it, you can change it if you would like to change it. But if you cover it up or you close your eyes, then how will it change, right? So I think that's such an important point. It's easy to disengage, but you need to be in the question about, is it time to shut the news off, or is it a contribution that this is angering me? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it a contribution to be watching and really becoming informed about what's happening? I mean, you know how verbal I have been about the things that are happening in Ontario in our long-term care system, right? And this has been going on for decades, not even years, decades.
Right.
And people have been unaware, right? And it's just, we're closing our eyes. But now COVID has made it so that we can't close our eyes. It's screaming, like these things are just so much in our face. So if we continue to look at them and we continue to receive the contribution that this thing that we are deeming as ugly is, then we can create something greater. But if we just ignore it and we keep shoving it under the rug, then how can we really change it?
Exactly. And how can we create the world? I mean, the people in your world, the people in my world, the people that listen to these shows on the network, we're asking to create a world greater than the world that we were given. And we want to make the changes. So what if it's showing up in a package that is not that appealing, but it's making it happen faster than we've ever seen anything occur before? It's one little example, like you're talking about when you were driving down the highway and how that you just had so much space and so much peace. I was driving on Monday. I actually, Petrina, went to my mother's retirement home and had to move her from one room to another. And, I had to drive out of the city, and as I was driving out and driving back, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all the traffic. Like, look at all the traffic. And it really had me question, what are we doing? What are we doing with creating our lives, creating our businesses, creating the economy in a way that forces so many people having to be on the road? And it may not be a really big thing, but it can affect so much of our lives and has us completely pull away from our families, pull away from our health. It has so many long-reaching impacts, and yet it's only one small thing that now is incredibly noticeable. And I really hope that we don't just wash it under the carpet. I really do hope that when people go, wow, this is so different, like we're going back to the old way, and let's go back to quote-unquote normal. But why? There's a lot of things that we accepted as normal that sucked. And it's just, we have such a brilliant opportunity right now to have strong, engaging conversations and really put forth new possibilities that will create more ease and joy and pleasure in our lives, in our families' lives, in our children's lives, in the world around us. That I think, when people keep going, I just want things to go back to normal, I really want to challenge them. I really want to challenge them that the new normal could be something greater than we've ever imagined.
I know we're coming up to a break, it looks like, but I looked up the word normal in the etymology dictionary, and I have some interesting findings. I know.
Awesome. Okay, hold it. Oh, there's the Petrina we know and love. She's always had the etymology. If you don't know, Petrina has a fabulous show that she did here on the network called Messy Adventures in Living, and I loved all your creations. And, we might tantalize Petrina to come back because she's just so brilliant. But, yes, you definitely are a word nerd, and we love that. All right, we're going to go for our second break of the night. My friends, you're listening to Inspired Choices with Petrina Fava and myself, Christine McIver, here on the Inspired Choices Network. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Many of us make choices in our lives based on our past experiences or what others believe. What would our lives be like if we made our choices based on what we desire for our futures? When you join Inspired Choices radio show with holographist coach Christine McIver, you'll be provoked to look at what is true and what you know but may not choose that requires your attention. Christine does not hold back and brings all her expertise during each and every show. Are you ready to create the life and the living you truly desire? Listen for Inspired Choices radio show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you ready to have pleasure with your business? Yes, I said pleasure with your business. The Pleasure of Business a la carte will surprise you with topics like meet yourself in the boardroom, money, services, and you. Expand your visibility. The pleasure of communication. The pleasure of Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Christine McIver has so much pleasure with business and loves teaching all things business. Beginning a new business? Desiring to expand a current business? Or looking to resurrect a business that has been dormant? This program will get you fired up and bring more pleasure than you have ever imagined. Exhausted with your excuses for not creating a phenomenal business? Join now for all the pleasure with business. Pleasure of Business a la carte gives you total choice for what you desire and what your business requires. That's 24 weeks of different topics to choose from with weekly calls, audio and video recordings, and PDFs. This class will have you dive right in and use tools to create the business that has been speaking to you. Go to inspiredchoices.ca for full details or join the Facebook page Pleasure of Business a la carte. Now is the time for you and your business.
This is Inspired Choices Radio Show with holographist coach Christine McIver. To participate in the program, call in the U.S. 815-880-8255, Canada 613-800-8736, or Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email by sending to Christine at inspiredchoices.ca. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We've got Petrina Fava in the house. We are talking about new normal or a different reality. Okay, so before we jump back into the conversation and get on the nerd alert. Wow, I can't even say that. Petrina, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
I have a website. It's petrinafava.com. They can reach me through there.
Okay, perfect. All right, and if anyone wants to get in touch with me, if you have any questions or comments about the show, I would love to hear from you. You can email me, Christine, at inspiredchoices.ca. I have some business specials that I've got up if you're looking to start, expand, grow, really move your business forward. I'd love to talk to you about that. And if you're somebody who's looking to put their voice in the world and you're thinking about having your own live show or a podcast, you definitely want to give me a call, or you can do so. Send me an email again at Christine at inspiredchoices.ca or check out the Inspired Choices Network for more information. Okay, so before we went to the show, Petrina says she looked up the word normal because Petrina was always known as our word nerd on the network. So Petrina, bring it home. Tell us what it's all about.
Oh my gosh. So, words have energy, right? And have you ever heard a word, or you heard some words and for some reason they niggle at you and you're like, ew, don't call me that. I don't like that word or whatever. So
yes,
etymology is the study of the origin of words. And I always find it really fascinating when I come across a word that bothers me or annoys me, and I'm aware of some lie about that word. And sometimes it's fascinating when I go to the origin of that word. So, of course, I did that for normal because I tend to not like that word. It's going to sound really snobby, but when I was a kid, somebody called me normal in school, and I was like, ew, don't call me normal. Insult. That sounds so snobby, but I was actually really like, ew, please don't call me that. I'm so not normal. But but yeah, and that's been one of the amazing gifts that I've really received over the last few years, is just being very happy to be weird and very happy to not be normal, because normal to me is quite boring. And anyway, okay, normal, if you look it up on etymology in an old dictionary from the 1500s, the definition of normal was, typical, common. But interestingly, in the 1600s, it had its roots in geometry. So the definition for normal in a geometrical sense was standing at a right angle or being perpendicular, which I find very interesting, right? A right angle, standing at a right angle. And then also the definition goes on to say that it means in conformity with rule, which is interesting, right? So to be normal means that you are in conformity with rule. And again, geometrically, something that's normal is made according to a carpenter's square. So a pattern, right? Or like even like a sewing pattern. So normal is the standard of judgment of something, right? Conforming to common standards or established order or usage, regular, usual. And then it goes on to say that actually there was in French, like in France, normal in the 1800s meant training. A normal school was a training college for teachers. Isn't that interesting that they would call a college for teachers the normal school, right?
Okay. Well, when
Amazing.
my mother was going to school, okay, there was a school in Stratford that was called Normal.
Wow.
that was the school that you went to. And I never clicked. I never even questioned it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right here. And the definition I'm looking at actually says it's a translation of French is école normale, right? Like the normal school. Oh my God. That's just fascinating to me that we would actually the school of normal, right? And so like how much change is in normalcy? Nothing, right? It's a standard. It's a pattern of rightness. I went on to look up the etymology of the word standard because standard is coming up so much when we talk about normal, and equally fascinating, right? Standard originally meant upright. Bred up
Standard
to
meant
agree.
Upright.
Yeah, it meant upright in the 1500s, and there was a term called standard bred, which meant bred to an agreed upon standard of excellence. And then if you continue to look at the word standard, there's a lot of talk about weight and measure, an instrument of measurement. And then, of course, comes the word judgment. So rule, principle, or means of judgment, a definite level of attainment. So lots of rightness, lots of judgment, right? And no question and no change. So how much change is there in normalcy?
Right. And if we are operating under a standard and we are being the good little boys and girls and following the normal, how much are we actually in the space of continuing to perpetrate what is actually not working for the whole of our society?
Right, because it's just more of the same. It's more of the pattern, the carpenter square, right? Like, let's get back to the pattern. Let's get back to the carpenter square. So what if, can we throw out the carpenter square and create something different?
Well, let's not throw it out for the carpenters. They need to continue to use it, but we definitely need to be in the space. If I was married to a carpenter, they need it. We definitely need, for our evolution, we need to be questioning, and we need to be in question, just like science, continuously evolving. What was working in the past with our world can no longer work with what is showing up today. And we've got to continue to change. I mean, I just think it's fascinating, Petrina. I read this. It was a very funny write-up about all of the things that have happened in 2020, trying to explain it to someone who didn't know anything about it. And it was funny, and it was kind of like, wow, we need to wake up. We really need to wake up. It's interesting to me, all of the things that have occurred, and most especially as the pandemic has come across different countries, how we don't have a way of operating on planet Earth where we are supporting everyone, and we have a mode of operating where we are continuously in communication with all countries and communicating. So if you get a best practice, let's share it. If you come up, you get a new body of knowledge, let's share it. And for people to want to learn about it, but also at the same time, well, the pandemic happened, and then the Black Lives Matter movement really became heightened, and one of the reasons is because of what's been happening to people of color with the pandemic. But I just think it's fascinating how all of these things are screaming right now, and they're begging for our attention.
Yeah, the Black Lives Matter thing, all of the protests that are going on about racism of all kinds. I heard a couple of people say things like, well, people have so much time on their hands that now they're protesting, right? They're not going to work. And I was kind of like, yeah, but exactly, right? So how much of a veil has that been? Like, how much has our normal lives, right? Get up, go to work, the daily grind, come home, blah, 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 have dinner, cook dinner, pick up your kids. Like, how much of that normal has actually been a veil? Right. Yes. And now that normal was disrupted and people can, like, how much can you see now? now that normal isn't there anymore, that veil of normal isn't there anymore. That's kind of how it felt to me when all of the Black Lives Matter protests were going on, and all of this heightened awareness of just all of the racial discrimination and everything that's going on with Aboriginals and all of this stuff, right? I feel like, because now we can see, because we've stopped the crazy normalness. It stopped. It came to a grinding halt. And how much of that, I feel like it's literally like a screen that just dropped. You know what I mean? Like a smoke screen that just fell. And all of a sudden we were like, oh, and I can see this now. It's so glaring. It's glaring at me because I can see it. So like all these things that are screaming, how long have they actually been screaming? But we've had this veil of normal between us and the screaming, like even and the earth. How much has the earth been screaming? But we've had this veil of normal. It's normal to get up and get on the highway and drive to work. And of course we have pollution. That's the price we pay for our normal lives and blah, blah, blah. But
right. And of course I wasn't aware of this because I've been so distracted in my busy life. Right. And this has given us so many opportunities, like you say, to drop the veil and to start paying attention to things. And, it is uncomfortable. People are very, very uncomfortable. For a lot of people who were never exposed to, were never aware, chose to not be aware, this looking at the racial divide that is happening everywhere in the world, it's making people uncomfortable. And when have we decided that being uncomfortable is not something that's actually a gift?
I say bring on more on bring it. Like I'll have
say that again.
I am saying bring on more discomfort. You know what I mean? Because it's a contribution. Being comfortable is hardly ever a place in which we create change. Comfort is normal, right? Comfort just keeps more of the same. I just saw on the news today that it's being predicted that we're going to have a horrendous hurricane season, and I kind of laughed, and I was like, of course we are. Of course. Of course we are. Great, and honestly, it might sound terrible, but I'm going to say it anyways, and that just, you got to bring it. We got to bring it. You got to bring on the uncomfortable. Because even this degree of discomfort I can see has not been enough. There are changes that needed to happen that are not happening. Do you know what I mean? Do you get that sense too? And I can only really reference what's happening here and the what's happened in our long-term care system in Ontario. For people who don't know, the military went in to take over, and there was a horrendous, horrifying report of these long-term care facilities where we were being overrun by cockroaches, and our elderly were being left to die and scream in pain, and just horrifying stuff if you read it. And yet we are still not seeing change. Even so, even with this horrific report, if you listen to our politicians, they're still not stepping up to the plate and implementing the changes that need to be implemented. So even at this level of discomfort, it's pushed us forward a little bit, but I feel like it may not be pushing us as far as we need to go to really step into a new reality or a new possibility. So, do we need more discomfort?
We do. There's a saying my brother always says is we don't grow in the comfortable times. We grow when things are uncomfortable. And, I've seen it with different individuals. One individual in particular lost someone in their family. Someone died, not from the pandemic, from, another thing that with the body, but they died, and the other person, previously they were really not doing a whole lot in their lives. They were kind of just going along to get along, and now they're in a position where they have to do it. The other person's gone. They have to step up. They have to make the changes, and they're able to. And I think that's a very good analogy for what's going on in our world. Things are changing. We're being forced to change. Things are being pushed right to the edge where people are no longer going to allow this to go on. They're making demands of the change. Now, I would love it if we could make these demands while honoring each other and being respectful, but these demands are going to be made, and for always with the intention of getting better and moving forward.
A greater system. Not even really a new normal, right? Like, and that's the whole.
No.
This idea of this language is irritating to me. New normal. I don't want a new normal. I don't need a new right angle. I don't need a new carpenter square. Let's create something completely different. What the heck has been going on with our governments, right? Like, what if we don't need our governments to be the way they are? What if they something completely different is available, right? Like, we don't need a new normal government. Maybe we need something completely and utterly different, right? Completely different. Clearly, we can't rely on our governments. I mean, I think if there's anything that this pandemic has shown me is that, my future has to be in my hands. We trust too much to our government. We are the population of Earth. We are the people of Earth. We outnumber politicians and governments. What can we create that's entirely different that we've never had before?
Right. I agree with you. And I think for all the listeners, I want to invite them in to continue to dig into the question of, is this really working? And let's have these courageous conversations. Let's continue to unpack what's not working in our world. And please, can we do it from the space of honor and dignity for the other person we're having the conversation with? I was watching our Prime Minister today, Petrina, for about 2 minutes. It was funny because I never do this, but it popped up and said that Justin Trudeau was going on live, and I turned it on my phone, and I was listening to him as I was working. And every once in a while, I would glance down and look at the comments. Oh, my Lord. Some of those comments were just horrendous. And all I kept thinking was, look, here is a human being that is doing the best that he can do with what he has in front of him. He has been challenging the status quo. I think he's trying to move things forward. He is not perfect, no. The system is not perfect, no. But it does not require us to be belligerent and mean and condescending and just outright disgusting to each other. That's not going to make the changes positive moving forward, right?
Right, and that is a type of normal, right? That's something that we've learned, that if we react in anger and we get angry and we hurt people's feelings and we're rude and we call them names, that it will get us what we want. But are you asking a question before you start spewing hate at someone? If I say this, what is it going to create? How can I respond that will create change, right? Instead of just reacting in anger and belligerency and being rude. I mean, is that how we create change? Like, maybe it has been until now, but is that going to work going forward? And is there something else? Do we need to step up to something better than that, something greater than that?
Absolutely. I'm excited about the future, and I'm a little apprehensive as well, because you just don't know what's going on, which I think that's a normal human reaction. And I'm going to challenge myself and challenge others around me to, let's keep diving into this. Let's keep asking the questions. Petrina, thank you so much for being here. It's so wonderful always to have a conversation with you. We adore you here on the network, and you always bring such amazing insight. And of course, your word nerd is always welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. My friends, next week, please join me where I'm going to be talking about tools to organize your businesses to thrive. Whether you have a business already, you want to start a business, or you want to revive a business, we're going to be talking all about tools. So stay tuned. And remember, you can always make another choice.
Thank you for choosing to listen to Inspired Choices Radio Show. Christine McIver will return next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, be willing to choose what you really desire. This is your life, making the choices that bring you all that you